Hi, everyone, and welcome back to The Basics, a series where we talk about mental health. In this episode, we're talking about something perhaps a little gritty, but not to those who can relate. It's the Dead Dads Club. We know this topic of conversation can be tough, especially for any of you out there whose grief may feel really fresh. But our hope for this conversation, if you've lost someone, especially a dad or a parent, you can kind of find solace in what we're sharing. I know for me, some of my most healing conversations I've had about losing my father were those with who connected and understood my grief because they too traveled it. With Father's Day coming up here in the U.S., we hope that this conversation can be a safe place for you to feel your grief, to hold space for your pain, and to just take a deep breath. We'll be for sure diving into some of our deepest parts of our grief as a way to just acknowledge the realities that come with losing a father. These are our stories, and not every facet may be relatable or translatable to your own, and that's okay. Some of us cope through humor, some of us are a decade deep into this grief, and some of us feel every bit as if it happened a month ago. But talking about our grief is important, and we hope you can take something away from this, even if it's just knowing you're not alone. We're so sorry you had to join the club. With all of that being said, we now want to introduce you to today's yapping crew, as there are both familiar and new faces. I'll go first. It's Kat here. It's kind of a full circle moment for me that thinking about us having this conversation, I lost my dad almost 17 years ago now and could never have imagined then getting to a place where I was vulnerably sharing this part of my story. So that's sort of a beautiful life circle moment, and I'm thankful to get to laugh and cry with this crew as we talk about our grief and woes of losing our daddies. Becky, you are up.
Hi, I am Becky. I have a dog named Buck, and I love to read fan fiction. Those are happier things to include in this. But while I've been at Taloha for 7 years and counting, I have been a part of the Dead Dads Club for much longer, 15 years to be exact. So Kat's got me beat by 2, but we're pretty close. Amber, do you want to go?
Yes, I'm Amber. I've been at Taloha for just over 5 years, and I've been a card-carrying member of the DDC, or the Dead Dads Club, for just 3 years. And I like to fill my time outside of work with traveling, reading, and hanging with my pups, Lola and Rudy. Lauren?
I'm Lauren. I've been working at Taloha for about 2 years now. It has been officially 3 years since my father passed away. And outside of Taloha, I enjoy watching TV series in one sitting, and I love to read as well.
I love that. Okay, so let's get into it. Why the Dead Dads Club? So when we were talking about this episode and what we wanted to title it, there's this beautiful scene that came to mind that happens in Grey's Anatomy. It happens between two characters, and every time I watch it, it makes me cry. But to set the stage, there's Christina, and then there's George. George just loses his father. And I wouldn't say that these characters are super close at this point in the series, but George runs out of the hospital. He's clearly emotional, and Christina goes out to talk to him. And she starts with this. She goes, there's a club, the Dead Dads Club. And you can't be in it until you're in it. You can try to understand, you can sympathize, but until you feel that lost. My dad died when I was 9. George, I'm really sorry you had to join the club. And he goes, I don't know how to exist in a world where my dad doesn't. And her response is, yeah, that never really changes. It makes me sad every time. I'm like, it's the never really changes part. I'm like, I felt so known because I think I first watched that episode, probably had to be at least like 8-10 years. And I always, like, after I lost my father, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have this like big hole of grief in my heart that I've never been able to, I just assume that maybe it gets less or it goes away and it just like forever is there. And I was like, just made me feel so known of like, I can still have this hole in my heart, my little heart. And it's okay. And it's sad. And I loved that scene.
Yeah, I think going off of that cat too, it's interesting because even talking about it in therapy, I've mentioned the idea of just feeling like there's like a hole somewhere and I can't necessarily fill it. And even like for you and I, with being 17 years and 15 years out of like that loss, it's fascinating because I don't cry as much about it. It's not as like the grief isn't as intense because I feel like I've processed it, but it doesn't really go away like that loss. You're always going to be sad. There's always going to be things that remind you of the fact that they're not here. I thought about like when I get married, he won't be there. That's always like in my head when I think about those future moments where they're not there. But and then interesting enough, I think over the course of those 15 years, my humor with it has just like exponentially grown. Like I make more jokes. I always did make jokes, but the jokes are like way up there now. So that's fascinating. Like the hole hasn't gotten bigger, but my humor has just like it's wild. Like it's out of control sometimes. So
I can even say that with only having 3 years under my belt. Like I remember the day after my dad passed, someone texted me similar to the line with between Christina and George of like, "Welcome to the Dead Parent Club. Sorry you're here." And at that time, I remember like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you sent that to me the day after my dad died." But now, like, it's Lauren and I are sisters, and our cousins also lost their dad, and we're in a group chat, the Dead Dad Club, and we all cope with dark humor. And so, like, but at the time, in those first few days, like, could not think about coping with humor. But even over just the past 3 years, the humor has grown, you know, maybe even larger than the hole in my heart as we, you know, continue to cope.
Feel the same way.
Yeah, it's. I've said some jokes just to make some. I've said jokes to make other people uncomfortable so that I don't have. Yeah, that's like where it's like sometimes the humor is nice to be like, oh, I gotta just joke about this, otherwise it just is too hard. And then sometimes I used it as a coping skill to like make someone else feel bad. I was like, they have no idea. And my favorite thing was to be like, they'd be like, yeah, you know how it's like the dads, can they just be so silly sometimes, the dad jokes. And be like, no, I don't have one. Okay, so one of the things we wanted to talk about is losing a parent much sooner than is typical. What is that experience like? Is it isolating? Is it surprising? So we've all, even though we've had different times, we've all can relate to losing a father much younger than they probably, you know.
Yeah, I mean, even going off of what I said before about thinking like in the future, if I get married, like my dad's not going to be there physically, like he's not going to be present. And that's been a reality for a long time for me. So like, have I come to terms with it? Like, yeah, I would consider that. Am I still sad about it? 100%. And even this weekend, I am in a friend's wedding and she's going to have both parents there. Which probably doesn't feel monumental to her, but to me, I'd be like, damn, what's that like? Yeah. I can't even imagine having that support, and that like hurts a little to say that, but that support from two different like parental figures. And I mean, I'm fortunate, like I had a very good relationship with my dad, but just thinking even the presence, like if you don't have like a super good relationship, the presence of that person like in the room, whatever it is, yeah, like that sucks. Like plain and simple, it sucks to think about that you have these big moments that are eventually waiting for you and you want those special people there, and someone who is really important to you just isn't going to be there. Like there's no way around it. They're not going to be able to physically be there. And yeah, so it's a disconnect, I think, with, it can be a disconnect with a lot of our friends. I have friends who still have their grandparents, and I'm just like, holy shit, what is that like? Yeah. So,
no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember in my rawest grief, when I would go to weddings, I couldn't watch the father. I realized after a few of them that I would just start crying. And I was like, I should just like bounce. So I made it in my rawest times. I would just like leave, go out and do something. I don't know, like go outside. Usually there's like an outside, and I just like couldn't participate. I think one of my favorite moments, though, recently was like my friend had lost her father to cancer, and we were at a mutual friend's wedding. We were both in it. And I knew she had just lost her father like 6 months, a year before this moment. And we were celebrating her bestie. And during the father-daughter dance, I went over to her, and her mom was there too. And I just like rubbed both of their like I was just there for them, knowing like that this is the worst. And this is probably the first time that they're seeing this. And I knew how triggering it was for me to like, I would just immediately get heartbroken. And so that was like, it's kind of one of those, like, if you know how hard it is, and then you can extend that to someone else. It's kind of like a beautiful.
Yeah, I feel like with kind of talking about like, you know, the order of death, and like your grandparents should be the ones that pass first because they've lived this long, full life. And so when it's your parent, and especially if you're young enough that your friends or most of your friends have not lost a parent, they've maybe, like you said, Becky, they might still have all of their grandparents alive, and so they don't actually like, they've never walked through a grief like this. And so I think one of the things that I found right after our dad passed, that was people, only the few friends I had, and it was few because I was 29, I think, and those friends reached out and still reach out, like on anniversary, on Dead Dad Day, as we like to call it, or the anniversary of his passing. Like, they still reach out and check in because they know what it's like. They've walked through it. And not that our other friends are like, they don't know how to be, compassionate or anything, but it's not like top of their mind because they have never lost a parent. And so like they might treat that grief in their head kind of like how you walk through when a grandparent passes after living a full life, because that's all they know. So that's all they're able to walk through. And so it is isolating in ways that if you don't have anyone that's gone through it, like you said, you don't know it if you haven't gone through it.
I think the good part, not the good part of my father passing, but I think Amber and I both lost a lot of family members at a young age that we weren't unfamiliar with grief, but it was still extremely different compared to all the other deaths that we have experienced. I lost my father while I was studying in London, in England. I thought he had moved me in to now I'm gonna cry.
It's okay.
Cody, edit this out. I'm just kidding. I had lost my father. Oh my god. Clearly, I'm going through it right now.
Oh no.
I'm so sorry.
You're good.
Don't apologize.
I'll be next.
Can I offer you a tissue?
From afar? It would have been great, Amber, if you were like holding up the tissue box and she really could have like pulled one out from like that one.
Oh my gosh, I lost my father. I lost my father the year before I was supposed to graduate college. I'm trying so hard.
It's so hard.
I know it pleases to be like sitting here.
No. Give yourself a space. I mean, it's okay to cry. It's hard.
The hard part is because we're not in person, because I'm immediately just like, can I give you a hug? Can I please? Amber would hand you her tissues.
Yeah.
I lost my father right before I was supposed to graduate college, and he had moved me into London. I studied abroad for 4 years, and I thought that I would be ending my university experience with leaving with him, and I did it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the whole time at graduation, I wasn't focused on myself graduating. I was focused on all the parents cheering on their kids graduating, knowing that it was just my mom and my sister in there and not my father. Oh my God. I was completely fine like 2 hours ago. But it was definitely very difficult. Even like the small little celebrations, like getting a new job or like I moved to a different city, I can't tell him that. Also, even like the weird things that like you think you know, but like it's something that you would call your dad for, like my car problems, taxes. I didn't even know how to fill out my taxes. My dad did everything for me. I didn't know how to work student loans. My dad did everything for me. So it's like I feel like I'm discovering myself with this grief and becoming more an adult, because I had my father kind of just help me with all these things that I realized, oh my gosh, I have to do this all by myself now. So it's like an everyday thing, like even like small things. Like I have no idea how to pump air in my tires. I would have just called my dad for that.
Oh gosh.
I really admire your tears because I think that I have a hard time crying. I have a hard time letting my grief out. And I lost my father when I was in 7th grade. So what are you, like 13, 12? And I've told you guys this before, but it's his funeral. And it's this day of his funeral. I don't even remember crying. I just remember grabbing a rose off of his casket. And I remember telling my mom they were going to do like a family like lunch and like gathering. And I said, no, take me to school. And they're like, my whole family is like, you should come. You should come to this family thing. And I said, nope, take me to school. And I was so adamant about it. And I went to school just carrying the rose on my dad's casket. And I'm just going into home ec like, here I am. And everybody at my school knew, because it's like, who loses their father that early? So they were like, this is intense. And I'm just there, just like, just walking around school with this rose. And so I feel like I missed out on an essential process, like an essential grief experience, because I just shut down. And so now when I want to cry, like I thought it was so, I admire, that's the word I would use. Like I admire your tears, because I still now, sometimes when they come, I'm like, shut it off. Like, don't do it. And I think it's such like this essential process. And I think what's hard about grief and losing a father or a parent is like, it hits you really unexpectedly. So if you're not willing to like give yourself the space to cry, you can miss these moments of like, man, that made me really sad. Like I felt like I've missed quite a few moments in my life of like, to be sad that I don't have a dad, because I just was so scared to feel, so scared to cry, and I wasn't even on camera. Like, like, I don't know. I think the grief is like, when you lose a parent, there's these obvious markers like we're talking about where it's like, oh, my dad would do this if he was here. There would be a wedding where he could do a dance with me and take me down the aisle. Or if I have car troubles, like these quintessential dad moments, or I'm graduating, these big milestone moments where your parents should be there and ushering you through that. But then there's also these really small, quiet, mundane of like, man, shit, I'm so sad that he's not here. If he was here, it would be so much better. And it's like that grief just comes.
Yeah, Lauren, I started to tear up like towards the end of you talking about that. Especially when you're going into these tiny things, the putting air in your tires. Like, I don't know if that's what hit me, but it like smacked me in the face, and I was like, oh, okay. I've had more time, obviously. to go through all of those things and recognizing those tiny moments. But I think it hit me in the face of like, here I am talking about a big thing like a wedding, right? Like those big moments, wedding, you have a kid, whatever it is. But it's those tiny things too that hurt just as much, if not more, because you're not thinking about them. I'm not sitting there thinking like, I have a flat tire or I could have a flat tire in a week and I don't know how to fix it and I would call my dad otherwise. You'd think about big moments like a wedding or having a kid. That's what your brain might go to. But in reality, it's those tiny moments where like their presence is so missed, and it adds, the grief is there, but I recognize it also adds like these challenges. Like it forces you to grow. So like you're learning yourself now. You have to kind of adapt and like you were saying, like become, Kat, you were saying become like more of an adult in that moment, and you have to like grow up. Those are moments that other people get, like that they have somebody there to teach them those things, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I'm on my own, or I don't have this default person to help me figure this thing out. So it's those tiny moments where I was just like, ooh, like it doesn't matter. Grief doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a big moment or something super tiny. It's still just gonna like slap you in the face. So
this one's a little bit of a giggle. I remember one moment really specifically. I was like almost dating this guy. We were like, it was like when I was younger, and we were like potentially interested in each other. And I just remember realizing I didn't like him. And I started crying in front of him, and he's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I was just sad because I was like, if my dad was here, he would kick him to the curb for me. Like, I remember, like, but I have to be the one to do it. Like, I just wanted my dad to be like, you suck. I won't let you date my dad. And I'm just crying, and he's like, what's wrong? Like, trying to console me. And I'm like, I can't tell you. I'm just going to cry and be like, it's fine. I'm fine.
That's a good one.
So silly, but it was so, it was so clear in my brain.
Yeah.
So we know that grief looks different. For Amber and Lauren, you are sisters. You both share the same father. What is it like to be sisters and experience the loss? What was different? What was similar?
Yeah, well, like you said, like everyone processes grief differently. And I know one thing for me, like our dad's death in itself, the timing was very unexpected. It was like, a complication to something, but overall, we knew he did not have that much time left. He would have needed a new liver and wasn't going to live long enough to see that happen. And so, our dad passed in 2021, and in the fall of 2019, when I was in therapy, I actually started processing the grief of losing my dad while he was still alive, because it was right after we kind of got that diagnosis that, like, you're probably not going to live to see a liver transplant or whatever. And so I started walking through that in therapy in 2019 of like, okay, like what does this look like? How do I mourn this loss? And it was a little weird because, dad was still alive. But I think in the end that really did help me. Like, obviously it was still sad when he passed because it was unexpected, and tears are still shed. It was just Sunday that we had the 3-year anniversary of his passing, and I was on a plane flying back across the country, and it was similar to the situation I was in 3 years ago to the day of coming home to say goodbye. And I was like sobbing on the plane next to these strangers who were like flying into Vegas for like a vacation, and I was like, hey, welcome to Vegas. But so like the grief, it still comes, but it looked different for me, at least like just walking through that early on in therapy. And then kind of how Lauren was saying, like, there's all these things that, like, we would call our dad for, of, like, how do I pump air in my tires or whatever. For me, as, like, the older sibling, I, like, kind of felt like I had to, like, step into, like, this, like, caretaker place and be like, okay, like, what would me or Lauren or my mom ask my dad to do? And then, like, I'm watching YouTube videos, like, how to saw through PVC pipe because my mom needed a PVC pipe sawed off the roof. My God. And I'm like, how to use a drill. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, these are things I thought I'd have time to, like, learn, or he would teach me. And now I'm using YouTube videos, which are great. But I just felt like I had to start learning these things to be the one that, like, to help my mom or to help my sister in that, like, older sister, number 2 Enneagram caretaker place. So, I don't know. That's a little bit how grief looked like for me. I don't know how... Well, I know how it looked for Lauren, but I'll let her share.
I just wanted to briefly say, full disclosure, Amber did do my taxes, so.
Full circle.
Right. I still don't know how to do it, and I'm still going to ask her next year, even though I'm a 26-year-old woman. Similar to Amber, I did process my father's grief beforehand, but not because of his diagnosis, but more because of our relationship, our own personal relationship. My father was a very open alcoholic, and it destroyed me as a teenager. So when I started going to therapy when I was 14, I was working on trying to remove the negative emotions that I have for my father. And instead of my therapist helped me greatly, but I think I went around her way of just completely shutting down every emotion that I had towards my father, where in my head, he was kind of already dead to me, which just sounds really, really effed up, but I, like, the relationship with him, the way he acted, the way he talked to people, he did a lot. And it was one of the reasons why I wanted to move away to the country, even though he moved me there. Moved away out of the country. He moved me there. So he was kind of already in my head, just like not there. And so when it did happen, when he did pass away, which Amber did bring up the flight, I flew 14 hours and then got off the plane and we went straight to the hospital and we watched him take his last breath. That, never forget. That was yeah, that was a doozy. And anyway, so all of that being said, it did prepare me for his death. And I thought that I also will admit, I thought that I was also like highly prepared. I'm like, I'm ready for this. Like, not that I'm like ready for him to die, but like, I'm like, emotionally, I'm ready. I can deal with this. I was not. Like, it was totally different. Like, at first I was more shocked, and now that like the years have passed, I'm like, I was not ready, like, at all. And like, going back to what I first said about the tiny things, like, those things hurt more than like the bigger things that I think of, because I'm like, it's so difficult. It's so difficult to navigate. And even though I had processed his death before he had died, it hurts more now. Like, I thought that I was good, and I am not. And I'm okay to admit that. But
yeah. There's a lot, right? So when there's the physical loss. So if you have to, watch them pass away, if it was an accident, if there's this traumatic experience, like, you have to go through that. That's its entire experience. It's on its own. And there's there's the death part, the funeral, the wake, the logistics that happen after, the new roles, changing out what you thought was going to happen, and now what you're having to renegotiate your reality. And then there's the part of, then to me that's entirely different, that's carrying the grief than after. And that is days, months, years, and it's different seasons, different yous that you have to then forever kind of carry this grief, and it just kind of hits you differently all the time. And I think what you said is what a lot of people can relate to, is even if you think you're maybe you're at your most grounded season, it is still a very difficult experience to navigate. And I think that just is relatable. I think that's so true. Even if you're super young or super old, losing a parent young like that, or before the hierarchy is they should go in order, grandparents, then parents, then you, then, you know, like there's like, so when you have to mourn them at any stage, I think it's just really relatable that it's like, I don't know that you can know how it's going to impact you or affect you. And I think there's a lot of grace in that, you know?
Yeah.
Even if you think, I should have been more, I think there's a lot of people who could feel shame about, like, I should have been more prepared. I should be able to handle this. I should be able to navigate this better. And I just think it's just such a human experience to not know, to need help and to grapple with that.
Yeah. And like we were talking earlier, like grief doesn't care. Like grief doesn't care if you're on a plane in front of strangers. Like it doesn't care if you're recording, you know, a video for work. Like it doesn't care. It'll show up in the most unexpected places. Like it's not you know, it's not like you need to be, 3 years in, this is where you should be. And so I think that that's important too, because especially in your grief, if you're then experiencing like close other family, close friends that are going to walk through the loss of a parent, that could also bring it up. And I think that when our uncle passed away last year, that was a little triggering for me. And I thought at that time, again, we were only 2 years into the loss of our dad, but I thought, like I should be fine. I should be totally cool, calm, and collective. And when we flew out for his services, I was like, oh, whoa, not okay. And I like remember at first kind of feeling like ashamed of like, well, I should like have it all together, but like that's not okay. That's not how it should be. And grief will hit you when you least expect it, and that's okay, because there isn't a handbook on, you know, how to walk through grief and how long it should take.
Yeah. I think like going back to our first, the first thing that we've talked about, like comparing it to other deaths, I thought that I was also prepared from like experiencing other family members passing, and I can tell you right now, it's not the same. It's not the same, and I sadly thought that it was the same for a while. And so I still feel guilty sometimes grieving still, even though it's only been 3 years. And there's no boundary on grief. There's no time limit on it. But I still feel guilty. And I don't know if it's because I have watched other people die, and I'm like, I kind of just like move on with my life after, and I'm like, I think about them and I'm like, oh, that's really sad. But this is like never ending. I'm like, oh no. So when our cousin's dad died, I remember like trying so hard to keep it together. And it was so difficult trying not to cry in front of them, because I was like, this is their moment. This is their moment to shine. But like, I couldn't. And I don't know. I just like, I mean, like, I guess I can ask like Becky and Kat, like, do you feel like it has gotten easier after like a certain year, or like is it still the same wavelength you're riding? You don't have to answer.
Kat,
No,
Kat, you want to go? We can, yeah.
Yeah. I think I feel like my grief, the space I gave my grief was delayed. So I think, you know, had I given myself more freedom and safety to be sad, to mourn the loss, I felt like I didn't have a lot of help. I felt like I didn't know how to do it. And I remember in college, I was listening to someone share about her loss, and she was like, you know, I'm 10 plus years into this and I'm just now starting. And I felt a lot of grace from that, because I was like, oh, I'm not this far behind. Like, I think you assume that there's supposed to be these steps you take. And I think every person's journey is unique. And so for me, I think once I finally gave myself the space to heal, to hurt, to be sad, to be mad, like, why did I have to lose him so early? Why do I not get to have a dad? Like, have those feelings. I felt like I was finally able to let go of some of the pain I was holding on to. And it wasn't until I gave myself that space, that it started to hurt less. I assumed if I was sad, then it would only make me hurt more. And I think for me in my personal journey that like once I did that, I felt a lot of relief. I felt a lot of like, it's okay. It's totally okay. You can be sad. And I think that really helped my journey. Took me, a few years to figure that out. I definitely stumbled through it a lot. I don't think I had a lot of people that I could lean on that could teach me how or to show me the steps. So I was learning a lot by myself. And so it definitely, my journey felt long. It felt like 10 years deep long of like navigating that. And now 17 years in, I feel like because of that, because of the work I did, it definitely feels like maybe it hurts less. I mean, this hole is there, but it doesn't hurt as much as it did. And I feel like only because I was able to like own that is my story. I don't have a dad, and it makes me really sad a lot. And I don't have a dad, so I feel like I miss out on certain things. And that's my experience. And so once I owned that, I feel like it really helped me. And once I gave myself the permission to be, hey, here's this, my dad has never met my child and won't. My dad wasn't there for my wedding. And I had a lot of interesting situations happen because of that. And like, I don't have it, like, he was my favorite person ever. And so now I get sad, but it doesn't hurt as much. And I think the process or the steps you take in grief are so important. Like, you can't really skip a step. And I think starting those steps really helped me heal.
I just went through, I think, eight different emotions all at once while listening to that. I was like, yeah, no, like I'm not grieving anymore. Like I'm fine. I had the realization just now though that like we so often think of grief as like sobbing on the ground, you're in complete distress, like awful. But it's recognizing too that like grief shows up in quieter ways too. Anger, like you can be pissed the fuck off. I'm thinking about that. So like little moments, and it doesn't have to be big. Grief doesn't have to be this big explosive emotion. Yeah. It can be tiny. Like we're talking about these tiny moments that we're saying like we miss our dads or we wish they were here. I think the response as well, the grief can be small too. And I still have moments. I don't think it'll ever stop. And there's a piece of me that doesn't want it to stop because I always think about the reflection of like grief being love. And it's like that loss, like you have this love still and you don't have anywhere to channel it into like physically, like this person. So there's a part of me that finds a little bit of like a beauty in it that I'm like, and even small things like I can be a very goofy person. I know for a fact I got that from my dad. So there's moments where I'll see it in my nieces and nephews, like it shows up and I'm just like, oh, that's from your grandpa. And it's this half sadness, half like excitement of being like, hey, he's still around in some capacity. And I'm okay with being sad. But then there'll be moments where you're angry. You get angry over the fact that someone else does have that experience and you don't get it and it was taken away from you. So I think it shows up in different ways. But it's hard. It's waves. The intensity changes. Like, I'd love to sit here and just be like, for everybody to be like, once you hit the 7-year mark, you're in the clear. No. That ain't how it works. It's not how it works. Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever felt this way or if anyone can relate to this, but I know that losing my dad impacted the way I pursued other vulnerable relationships. So, like, when I got married, I was really afraid because my parents got a divorce and then my dad died. So I was really afraid of loss. I was really afraid of like, what does it look like if I love this person and I lose them? And it was so fucking scary. I would have nightmares for the first year of our marriage because I was just so scared to love someone again and lose them. And then it happened again when I experienced my miscarriage. And I decided to try again. And I remember thinking, You can be brave. This is bravery. Like, you are so scared of losing again, but you can do it. I remember telling myself, just like, and I love what you shared, Becky, because it's that grief is showing how much you loved. Like, it's this beauty, it's this beautiful, and I just remember being like, it is beautiful to love someone, and it's more amazing. Life is more amazing to have lost and loved than to never let yourself love at all. And so there is this healing aspect of, like, it can just be so hard when you've lost someone like this to then take your vulnerability to other relationships. And I don't know if anyone else has felt that, where it's like, I don't know, that sounds like that would suck. Like, where it's like, I don't know if I want to lose again because it hurts too much.
Yeah, it's that, for me, it's shown up, Kat, you and I have talked about this too, it's that hyper-independence.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I fell into super hardcore after my dad passed away, and I think I'm still getting my way out of it. And I am. I shouldn't even, like, beat around the bush. Like, I'm still trying to come out of this, like, hyper-independence and let other people support me, help me, see me be vulnerable. And I even, with this, like, thought of, like, abandonment, I've known it for ages. I've got an abandonment wound. Like, it's there. So for me, it can show up in such silly ways, too. It doesn't even have to be, like, a romantic relationship. It can be just with friendships. It's happened, I went back to counseling, like, back in January. It's happened with my counselor, where I'm just like, I don't know, I feel like this is getting too intense, and I need to put some space between us because I feel attached to you, and there's support, and, like, whatever else. So it's even in those moments where you're just like, I feel vulnerable. I feel like I appreciate this person so much. I adore this human. It's a give and take. They give me support. I feel loved, like, whatever it is. And in that moment, that realization, you're kind of like, oh no. Like, you're just like, I gotta get out of here. This doesn't feel safe to me now. Yeah, it's that abandonment is terrifying. It's terrifying. And I think people feel it in general, but then to have, like, death, you're just like, no, that's the ultimate, like, abandonment, it feels like, in a way. You're just like,
forever.
God.
Okay, so as we round out this conversation, I feel like we could end it with, what would you say? Because we've all related and had really hurtful things said to us in our freshness of grief. If you could say one thing to someone right now who maybe just lost their father or lost a parent, what would you say to them?
Allow yourself the space to feel all the things, feel all the emotions. It's a range, and it might, come in waves. It might not all happen at once. And I think another thing that would have been helpful to me in those early, days, weeks, months was grief is not a comparison game, and your grief is going to be personalized to you, and how it looks for you doesn't make, and compared to how it looks like for your friend that lost a parent. You're allowed to have your own individualized story with grief, and if you aren't at the same spot as your friend, even if you lost in the same amount of time, that's okay. It's your own personalized journey, so don't compare your healing process to others.
My initial response, Kat, when you asked that question was literally just woof. Like, that's woof. But from my own experience, like what Amber was saying, it is very individualized. So my advice might not fully speak to somebody else, and it may speak to somebody else, like, on a huge, like, massive wavelength. But my advice from my own experience would be to don't shut down. Don't shut it down. Don't rely. I know it's hard. You don't feel safe. But find someone who you do feel safe with, and rely on them. Let them support you. Yeah, don't shut it down. Don't try to bury it. Don't try to carry it on your own. because it sucks and it's isolating and it's lonely. And if you fall into that trap, it's really tough to get out of. It sucks, and it's going to impact you in ways I don't think you even anticipate it will, like mentally, physically, everything. So yeah, don't shut down and find someone safe. Find somebody safe to ask for like support and help with it. So.
I think going into the lonely aspect of it, I think that was like my biggest struggle, like being young and not having a lot of friends who have experienced it. My word of advice is that even when you feel alone, you are literally not alone. Like, I wish that I knew that, even though I had my sister to go through it, which I'm thankful that Amber also gets to experience a dead father with me, but it's like, I'm so thankful that I had her in this, because if I didn't, I honestly, I don't know how. I rely on like other people and communicating with other people that I don't know how, and I feel guilty talking to people sometimes about my own father's death because they don't know what I'm talking about. And then I just feel like I'm just a broken record and saying the same things, but if I talk to Amber about it, she's like, no, I get it. Mm-hmm. So I just want people to know that even when they think that they're alone, they are really not alone. There are people out there. There are clubs. There are Dead Dad clubs on Facebook that I'm in. And there's thousands, hundreds of people in them. We're on meme accounts on Instagram. Like you will find your community. You are not alone. That's my advice.
I love that.
That is really good. Mine is be mad, be sad, be annoyed, be happy with your memories, find joy, and have the gambit. You're allowed to experience this to the fullest. And I think there's something, I wish I could say to myself that was like little me back then was like, be gentle with yourself. Like, be so gentle. You do not have to do this perfectly. Don't shut down. Let other people help you. Sometimes that may hurt. They're not going to do it perfectly, so it may hurt to let people help. But I'm confident you'll find someone who gets it and can be there for you. And I think grief has the potential to be beautiful if you let it. And it's yours to write. It's yours to create. You don't have to do it like how anyone else has done it before. And it's your story. And I wish I could have owned more of my grief and allowed it to have more space in my life. And so if you can relate to that, just know that you're not weak for being sad and needing help. You're not weak, that this is your story. You lost someone you loved. And so I wish someone would have said that to me when I was going through my experience early on. And so that's what I would share and say.
Mm-hmm.
Take deep breaths.
Oh, yeah.
Daddies. We have dead daddies. We're sad. We cried. You didn't do it.
No, I should have had counseling though today. Like I should have had this on a Tuesday. No. This is like a counseling session though. It's like group counseling.
Oh, yeah. Group.
The DDC.
Yeah, it's a sport group.
Yeah. Yes. Not wrong.
We tell work it's actually becoming like a club, like a work club.
we meet every week.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
We will be back soon with another episode. Until then, do not forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and turn on that notification bell to be notified every time we post a video. And as always, you do not have to do any of this alone. As Lauren said, as many of us have said, you can find resources by going to taloha.com/find-help. You are not weak for needing help, and we are so glad you're here.